Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's lecture brought to you by the University of Hertfordshire with IDP. Today's session is going to take about an hour, and so we'll run till 2 p.m. British Summer Time. But as usual, the recording will be made available on the website from Monday. Today's session again is led by myself, Brad Johnson, and I'm the programme lead for this Business Strategy, Education, Marketing and Sales Development programme. But today I'm joined by Shai Asmir, who's Head of International Recruitment with us at the University of Hertfordshire. This programme is the Business Strategy, Education, Marketing and Sales Development programme brought to you by the University of Hertfordshire. It's a series of 5 lectures, with this being lecture number 2. We're also running a revision lecture, of which some topics from this lecture will be included, and parts of this lecture will be included in the final assessment that will be set at the end of the programme. As I said, this is lecture 2, supporting international students when applying to the United Kingdom. So firstly, this is our introduction to the UK. So this part of the lecture will help you sell the UK more to your students, and will give you some facts and figures that will help explain a little bit why the UK is an amazing study location. So firstly, the United Kingdom is split into 4 countries. You've got Wales, England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. England and Wales system is pretty similar, but the Northern Irish and Scottish university systems are slightly different because they are devolved. So the UK is a vibrant location with a mix of cities, towns and countryside. And in that countryside, you'll see things like villages and hamlets. Most universities are based in or around a major city or in some larger towns. The University of Hertfordshire is a town-based university, and that's because we're a campus university. So most campus universities are not in major cities because they tend to be spread about over the city, where a campus university like ourselves is a self-contained teaching unit. Obviously, the benefit of these campus universities is that they normally have easy access to a major city, so you get the benefits of both. The UK is a multicultural country, and there's home to around about 500,000 international students from over 200 countries and principalities. So that means the UK pretty much has a student from every country and principality in the world, which makes us, one, very experienced in teaching students from overseas and teaching people whose English is probably not their first language. But also, we've got an amazing history of academia here in the United Kingdom. Our universities stem back around 300 to 400 years. So we are a very research-rich country and very academically experienced. As I've said before, a large population of international students, and approximately 19% of all of the student population in the United Kingdom is from international students. So not only do students who come to study in the UK get the benefit of mixing with a lot of British students, they'll also meet students from their home country, but also meet students from around the world. So as well as gaining a high-class education, they also gain an international network, which should help them in their future career. As I said before, the UK is split into those 4 countries. You can see them there. We're based in the southeast of England, just north of London, but you can see the other 3 parts of the UK there. They're all very different. They have different landscapes, they have different cultures, and they offer a different experience to your students as well. So it's important to consider what students want when they choose to study in the UK. If they do want a city living, obviously there are city universities. They want campus experience, obviously there's many campus universities, but there's also other areas that some offer a beach university, so a university on the coast. Some offer a really remote university experience as well. So it's important to really look at where the student plans to study and if it aligns to what they want to get out of their student experience. So the UK in general is an amazing place to live, and it's also an amazing place to visit. So when students are in the UK, they can explore the UK, visiting our various cities, our countryside location, and the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Some of the cities in the UK can be very historic. For example, St Albans, which is next door to the University of Hertfordshire, has history back to the Roman ages. Some of our towns and city go back even further than that. So it's a great place to explore the different culture of the UK. Secondly, there's many museums and galleries in the United Kingdom, many of which allow free entry to them. But the benefit of these locations means that they also supplement learning. So as well as being a tourism location, they offer an additional benefit to the student. So for example, the Science Museum, obviously there are areas of learning for aerospace engineers, automotive engineers and civil engineers, for example. But there's also the social history of the Science Museum and the changes of technology. Likewise, for places like the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Tate galleries, they often contribute to learning. So the students combine it as a fun experience to do with friends, many of them free, but also contribute to their learning and wider experiences. Thirdly, the UK has a thriving theatre industry. So popular ones that many students will know about is Broadway. That's obviously in New York. We have what's called the West End. It's in central London, and it's really close to a lot of great eateries, bars, restaurants, and also Covent Garden, which you'll know is a big open space in London where there's lots of areas to relax, there's live music. You can see nearly every kind of theatre show on the West End, but there's also a selection of plays as well if your students are into more drama. The UK also has a large music scene. We obviously have our amazing concert venues, Wembley Arena, the O2 Arena, but we've also got major stadiums such as the Olympic Stadium and Wembley Stadium, which host larger concerts with about 80,000 people attending. We often attract most of the global music stars from the US and the rest of the world. But also it's another great opportunity to expand on the learning of the student. Obviously we have programs in music industry management, live sound and lighting, marketing. And what students can do is they can look at how these professionals are doing it, and they can then reflect on that in their coursework. And so there are some real benefits of being in a really rich tourism and rich sports environment and rich arts environment to complete your studies. And then the next part is about transport in the United Kingdom. So we're obviously close to London, which is basically a transport spoke for the UK. So you can get pretty much anywhere in the United Kingdom from central London. So here's just some examples. So from London, about an hour and 20 minutes to get to Brighton, which is a seaside resort, 2 hours to get to Manchester, 2 hours to get to York, an hour to get to Cambridge, and 4 hours to get to Edinburgh. So just because your students may want to experience Manchester, Manchester might not be the best place for them to study. Living and studying near London gives you the benefit of being near the capital, in the southeast of England, a very prosperous job market, but you also get to be really close to all the transport links. The other benefit of being close to London is that you can actually go to Paris and Belgium. So we have something that's called the Channel Tunnel. It connects the UK to France via an underground tunnel underwater. And there's a train that goes through it called the Eurostar. The Eurostar goes now all the way to Belgium. And so students can actually get a 20-minute train from the University of Hertfordshire to King's Cross St Pancras and board the next train to Paris. And so great place to be if you want to travel to UK and further afield. Most major cities and towns have a close airport. The London-based ones are Heathrow, Gatwick, Stansted, Luton and Southend. Most students who come to the UK will transit through Heathrow, but other major cities have them like Manchester, Birmingham, etc. So there's international airports across the UK, as well as regional ones if you prefer to fly in country. Just looking at the currency of the UK, and this is useful just to explain to students a little bit about how it differs. So you can see we've got 4 notes and 8 coins. So our 1p and 2p are called 1 pence and 2 pence, but British people will refer to them as p. They're often called coppers. And the reason they're called coppers is due to the colour. The other coins are silver and gold in their makeup, but the 1 and 2 pence are more of a brown copper colour. Then you've got the other denominations. The next one I'll talk about is the pound, okay? £1 sterling. This is often known as a quid, okay? And basically in the UK, quid is another word for a pound, okay? So someone could say, oh, that'll be 2 quid. That means it's £2, okay? So that's a little bit about the coins. Students will use all of these coins. The £2 coin is the least commonly circulated. Looking at the notes, the first thing to make you aware of is that students should not carry £50 notes, okay? This is not because of safety reasons, it's because of most shops and retailers rarely accept a £50 note, just because it's too big of a denomination. So if the students do ever need to have to withdraw and they withdraw £50 notes, it's worthwhile advising them to go to a local bank to have it changed down into 20s, 10s or 5s, okay? So that's something to be aware of. The other things is on a £5 note and a £10 note, they're often called fivers or tenors. So that's something to be aware of as well if they're ever speaking to a British person. If the student is ever confused about what's being referred to, most British people will adjust their language to be using the more standard British terminology if they're asked. So that's just a little bit about currency there. The other thing is if a student's travelling on a bus, a lot of buses in the UK only take cash still. A lot do take card, but it's important to have loose change, so coins for that. A lot of buses don't carry a lot of loose change, so they don't usually like to accept a higher denomination of note. So this next bit is all about facts about the United Kingdom, and these are just really useful facts to tell students just to make it a little bit more relaxed when you're explaining about the UK. So as a stereotype, British people do drink a lot of tea. We drink about 165 million cups of tea a day. That's about 3 per person a day. We also drink about 30 million cups of coffee. The stereotype is correct. We do drink a lot of tea. I've actually got a tea in front of me right now while I'm delivering this lecture. Swans in the United Kingdom are owned by the Queen. Obviously, the Queen is, I think, the world's longest reigning monarch now, came to the throne, I believe, in the early 50s. She owns every swan in the UK, as well as some beautiful royal estates. And what I'd also advise is that students go and visit those royal estates. So there's Windsor Castle, Balmoral in Scotland, there's Sandringham in Norfolk, you've got Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, and students can actually make a weekend of visiting these areas because they're often in very pretty areas, and they can also visit the royal places as well. And at times of the year, such as Easter and Christmas, when students might be staying in the UK, often the royals do come and do visits, or they make announcements from these locations. So you know, the British accent is very varied. We often call it dialect, and it changes pretty much every 25 miles. That's about 40 kilometres. So my accent, I have lived in the south of England for approximately 7 years, but I have a Midlands accent from the East Midlands. Whereas you'll notice that Shiaz has a more southern accent because he grew up and lives in the south of England. So you can see there are accent dialects. The next bit is about the UK and Britain being used interchangeably. They're not the same thing, but you often will use them interchangeably. So just so you know, Britain is Scotland, Wales and England. And when you say the UK, the United Kingdom, technically it's the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They are interchangeable and it doesn't really matter how they're used, but just to explain, that's the difference. People think that Big Ben is the name of the famous clock tower in London. That's actually incorrect. Although it's commonly known as Big Ben, it's the name of the bell that's called Big Ben. There are also some smaller bells in the tower, but Big Ben is the main bell that rings, the famous chime. Stonehenge is a popular tourist destination in Wiltshire. That's the south of England, about 2.5 hours away from the university. But it's older than the pyramids, and I believe it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There's approximately 300 different languages spoken in London alone. So you can see that's what makes London so great. We're a melting pot of different cuisines, different cultures, different people, different nationalities. So it's a great place to explore and find out about difference around the world. We're a large country, but no matter where the student lives, they'll never be more than 115 kilometres away from the sea. That's about 80 miles. So it means they can visit all of the British seasides. Our seaside towns are very historic. They hark back to the 1850s when seaside travel became a thing in the UK. Some great architecture to visit. And I think the UK, if a student is studying an architecture degree, is a fantastic place to base their studies. And as I said, there are 31 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in the UK. And if you visit one a weekend, that's 31 weekends done already. Things you need to know about studying in the UK. So there's about 400 universities and colleges, and they offer about 50,000 degrees across the board. That's why it's really important to work with your university partner. That's why your role is so important, to help the students make sense of this very busy market and make the right choice about the program they want to study and where they want to study. There are different deadlines for applying for different courses and to different universities, so it's important to make yourself aware of these so students don't miss any key deadlines. There are international tuition fees to be paid. These do vary by university and in some cases course, so it's important to realise what your student's budget is and whether they can feasibly afford to study at certain institutions. The amount of money required to study in the UK, living costs, does vary. Obviously, the UKVI has two price points that are available in terms of money that needs to be shown. But really, large cities, no matter where they are, tend to be more expensive. And you'll find that rural universities and campus universities normally offer a more affordable option for students. English is required on all university courses, and we do ask for a demonstration of that through evidence, and Shires will talk about that slightly later. And first year students do tend to typically live in university halls of residence, although they can live off campus if they want. Again, Shires will talk about that later on in the session. So just looking at the UK education system, these are the typical education options for students in the UK, and these are just to make yourself aware of, in case you have any students come and see you who have studied at an international school where they study the British curriculum. The first one to make you aware of, and it's a change that happened about 2 years ago, is the GCSEs, the 14 to 16 education. So they used to be graded between G and A star, but now they're graded between 1 and 9, 9 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. The University of Hertfordshire now accepts a 4 as well as a C. So that's something to be aware of. Before it was just a C, so now you can look for a 4 or a C. Obviously, if it's a B entry, that will be slightly higher. The A level is graded between U and A star, and that's the full 2-year A level. But if a student has an AS level, that will go up to a maximum of an A. So you'll never see an A star at A level. You'll never see an A star at AS level. Looking at the qualifications and in higher education, the main ones we will look at now are foundation degrees. So that's the typical 2-year programme, or is part of a pathway, okay? So not the most popular programme, but is available. Then we have a bachelor's degree. It's typically a BA honours or a BSc honours, and that's a 3-year, sometimes 4-year degree, depending on whether it's got a placement year or a study abroad. If a student doesn't complete that, and we always discourage non-completion, they would get a diploma of higher education or a certificate of higher education, but we always want them to complete a BA or a BSc. The integrated masters is technically an undergraduate degree, but has postgraduate level endings, okay? So they're your M.Pharms, your M.Engs, or your M.Physis, and there are some other titles as well. These are a undergraduate degree. However, they do a 1-year extra, which turns it into a postgraduate level qualification. They're priced at the undergraduate level pricing, but they do carry that award. Master's degrees, typically an MA, an MSc, or an MPhil, again, other titles are available, is a 1-year, sometimes 2-year if it's got a placement award, and it's at level 7. Again, if you complete only 1/3 of it, you get a PG Cert. And if you complete 2/3, you get a PG Dip. But what, again, we like students to complete because otherwise it's called classed as non-continuation. And then after that, you have higher doctorates, which is your more research-intensive, longer-term programs. So just looking at the grading, it's split into two halves. You've got undergraduate and integrated master's degree on one side, a third class being 40%, a 2-2 at 50%, a 2-1 at 60%, and a first class at 70%. And looking at the master's degree, your pass is now at 50%, not 40%. Then you have a merit from 60 and a distinction from 70. Just to note, if a student does leave with a postgraduate certificate, they will only get a pass or a fail and not any grading. The Office for Students regulate universities in the United Kingdom, and they award things called the TEF, okay? That stands for Teaching Excellence and Student Outcomes Framework, and it's a measure of undergraduate qualifications here in the UK. There's 3 levels: gold, silver and bronze, as well as provisional, which is when it's been applied for, and then when it hasn't been awarded yet. These are currently at an institution level, but in next year, they will be going down to a subject level. So it's called subject level TEF. So that means the university itself will have a TEF score. However, the individual subjects it teaches may have different scores. So the university may be a gold, but have silvers, bronzes and golds in their portfolio, or they may have a few golds in their portfolio, but only be a silver themselves. So that's something to be aware of, looking at quality of program level information. And then the next bit is all about accreditation. So most of the programs here at the University of Hertfordshire are accredited by their professional bodies. That means they've been developed in partnership with the bodies. It means that when the students graduate, their course is recognised by the professional body. And in some instances, it means they're allowed to practice under a protected title, okay? These are just some of the most popular ones, more famous ones. You'll see ACCA for accountants, CIPD for HR professionals, NMC for nurses, IET and the Institute of Mechanical Engineers for engineering, the SRA, Bar Standards Boards and NOUT for law. So these are just a few, but you should always try and seek out courses which have these professional accreditations. It means they're backed by the professional body, the people who represent people who work in that industry, but it also means that they've been developed with industry. And we put a lot of importance on developing programs with industry because it means that our students will stand a better chance of getting a job because they have the skills that the profession and the employer wants. So that completes my part of today's lecture. I'm going to hand over now to the Head of Recruitment from the University of Hertfordshire, Shayaz Mia, who's going to talk you through supporting a student in the application process to a UK university. Thank you, Shayaz.
Thanks, Brad. Really appreciate that. Excellent presentation there on the UK system. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our IDP counsellors. I'll be talking to you, as Brad mentioned, about the application process and some of our updates in at UH as well. So I'll kick off with making an application. There's 7 key steps or stages for students when they make an application with us. So number 1 is the starting point, is obviously the guidance that they receive. And this is where we rely on you guys to provide the best information and obviously promote Hertfordshire and its programs for the students. In addition to that, obviously the international office provides as much support as possible through our regional managers and international officers, as well as our in-country staff. So in India, we've got Banu and Subul who support you with their team there as well. So the next stage is obviously choosing the right course and the right level for the student. Obviously we get students that come straight from high school into undergraduate and then students from undergraduate to postgraduate, but often you do have students that want to do the same level or want to come from an undergraduate degree where they've done 1 or 2 years into our final year or something like that. So that's a key stage of obviously identifying what they'd like to come onto. Then it's creating the application online on our portal. So we used to do paper-based applications. We moved away from that a while back to move to a paperless system. And this system allows us to not only give you a quicker decision, but also track the application as well at different stages of it, whereas with the paper-based system, it was a bit more difficult. And obviously, as part of the application, we'd look at the English level for the students. So as you know, from India, we accept standard 12 instead of having an IELTS as a mandatory requirement. But in addition to that, we've got some additional announcements as a result of COVID, where we accept different levels of different CELTs, which I'll go into more detail later on in the presentation. Also, we are looking at managing students' applications. So as I mentioned, we can track those applicants through our online portal. But if you really want to dig into the detail, our regional teams based in country and our regional managers can give you very specific information about any outstanding documents, any changes that were needed to their statements, and anything extra that they need to do for us to be able to assist them. The next stage, once they've got the unconditional offer, is obviously assisting with the visa application, so they can make, once they've got their CAS, and finally supporting the students with their accommodation. So this is pre-arrival. So making an application, a lot of you might be familiar with this page. This is where students make their online application. We've tried to make this as simple as possible, where they only need to fill out a few details, and this will produce an applicant ID for them. Once they've got their applicant ID, if they've missed out any information or they need to provide additional documentation, as long as they provide that applicant ID or they have that applicant ID, they can go on to our online document upload system and upload those additional documents, or email in to the international office with that applicant ID to provide anything else. With regards to the online application, it's a very, very short process. So as a result, it doesn't allow you to save partway through the application. However, as I say, if they don't provide all the information in one go, as long as they submit it and get an applicant ID, they can send those additional documents at a later stage. The next part is preparing the students' documents. So if they are coming for an undergraduate program, the key things that we look for initially to give them their offer is the transcripts, the graduation certificate where possible, the certificate of English proficiency. So this would be standard 12 or IELTS or the equivalents that I will talk about, and references, which includes employer references and academic references. For postgraduate, it remains very, very similar, but the only thing we'd look for is obviously their undergraduate transcripts and their undergraduate certificate instead of their high school transcripts. If we go to the next slide, for students with previous UK education history, we will look for previous CAS letters, confirmation of enrollments, previous visas, so visa stamp, and if the students have returned to their home country, we'll also ask for exit stamps as well. And of course, progression statement or justification statement if they're coming onto the same level, or it doesn't show a natural progression from maybe one subject area to another subject area. The English language requirements is something that obviously all universities have to satisfy the UKVI requirements, and obviously to ensure that the students are able to understand the course being taught in English. As I mentioned, for India, we'll accept standard 12 with 65% for undergraduate courses and 70% for postgraduate courses. We've made quite a few changes. So now we will accept Pearson's test of English, as well as Password, TOEFL, Duolingo, and as long as those are those scores that they receive are equivalent to IELTS 6 and 6.5, they should be able to come onto most of our undergraduate and postgraduate programs. This table highlights what kind of scores that they will need. So it's a very useful table for you guys to refer to if you do have students that come in with scores outside of ones that you're familiar with. And this table is available on our website should you need it. The next slide talks about the personal statements and what we look for. So there's 4 main questions that we need answered as part of the personal statement. The reason for applying, the reason for applying for the course, the reason for applying to the University of Hertfordshire and the reasons for applying to a UK university, as well as what their future aspirations are once they fulfill this course or complete this course. There's an example there, and this is the same example that is available online when they complete the application form. As long as they cover those four main points, the personal statements will be accepted. Of course, they can include additional stuff on there, such as their extracurricular activities, their work experience, their hobbies, everything else. But if they don't cover these four main points, they could have a personal statement that's 4 pages long, but it wouldn't be deemed acceptable. If they do include those other areas, it's fantastic because it allows us to consider them for a scholarship as well. And so we do encourage that, but we just want to emphasize that as long as that they should include those 4 points. And then the next thing is the CV. Now, the CV isn't something that we typically ask for as part of the entry requirements. But the reason why we're including it as part of this presentation is because if you do include it, it allows us to make decisions much, much quicker because it gives us a quick snapshot of their work and educational background. And any gaps, they can be explained from the CV. And it also, again, it allows us to consider any scholarships that they might be eligible for based on, the CV, including additional work experience, things that they might have done outside of work and education. And it just makes the whole process a lot easier for us. So although it's not a requirement, we do recommend it's something that you include. So the other area that a lot of people, ask queries about is bank statements. So in terms of the bank statements, again, it's a UKVI requirement that the bank statements are provided as part of their visa application. And what we do at the university is just make sure that the bank statements provided are in line with what the UKVI are asking. So this helpful diagram shows you exactly what a typical bank statement should look like and what information it should include. So this should be the sponsor's details. So if it's themselves, then if it's the student's details, it should be including the student's details, or it should be the parent or the legal guardian. Now, a lot of you will be aware it can't be an uncle or an aunt or a brother. It's got to be either the student or the parents or the legal guardian. Of course, it's got to include the account number, the name and the logo of the bank, the amount of money that's available in that account. It's got to be the originals, and it's got to be in English or have a translation included as well. And if it's not originals, it needs to be stamped and dated by the bank. On the next page includes the bank letter. So typically you would be asked to provide a bank letter highlighting that they've held the account for 28 days, and that it has no more of 31 days before the date of the application as well. Again, it must be originals and it must be on letterhead, and it must have a certified translation if it's not in English. So if you go to the next slide. So students can complete the financial declaration. Again, as I mentioned, we check the bank statements as part of our application process, and it's got to meet the Tier 4 visa requirements, which is 10 points for the financial documents. If you're applying for a course lasting 9 months or more, the maximum amount that the student will need to show for maintenance is £9,135, which is equivalent to £1,015 per month. And this is for Hertfordshire because we are outside of London. If you go to the next slide. So reference letters, again, very, very important. Choosing a relevant referee, printing it on an official university letterhead, explaining the student's relationship with the referee. It should include, the relationship that they have, as well as that they have confidence with the student to be able to complete the course, and that they sign the referee signs the letter, and it includes their details at the bottom. One thing I would like to add with regards to the reference is that at the moment we're aware that a lot of institutions may be closed and those reference letters might not be available. So if you do have any students with a condition of a reference letter and their institution is closed, please let us know and we will be able to make some concessions for this. This will be just for this year, or until we get over the lockdown period, or institutions start opening it back up again. And so there's two examples of employer reference and academic reference there. Again, you'll get a copy of this presentation, and so you should be able to use those to support your students if you need them. If you go to the next slide. So we also do a credibility interview with students. So this is to not create obviously an additional check for the students. It's more to support them, because if the UKVI interviews them, we want them to be ready for that interview. So what we'll do is do a mock interview as part of the application, just to make sure that they are ready. And if we have any concerns, we'll highlight those to our teams on the ground, as well as to you, to provide additional support until we're satisfied that they'll be able to pass an interview with the UKVI. Now, the reason why we've done this is over the past 4 to 5 years, we've noticed that students that generally go for an interview it is a bit challenging. And once we started doing these interviews, they felt a lot more comfortable. And as a result, we actually saw visas being granted more often as well. So it's definitely a good exercise as part of the application process. So when is the CAS usually issued? So once the student has cleared all conditions and paid their deposit, they'd be eligible for the CAS. So in terms of conditions, this will need to include providing all outstanding documents, as well as completing the immigration history questionnaire, providing any existing visas that they've had, any visa refusals, and obviously answering any questions that we might have in relation to the visits that they might have had to another country or to the UK. We will issue the CAS 3 months before the course start date as well. So that's something to bear in mind, that we won't issue a CAS prior to that date. Obviously, if there are extenuating circumstances, do let us know, and we can have some level of flexibility during the lockdown period as well. If we go to the next slide, I'll talk to you about accommodation. So this is obviously once students have got their CAS, they've made their visa application, they'll be thinking about where can I stay. We've got over 5,000 rooms available on campus for students, and for international students, we do guarantee accommodation for the first year in our semester A intake. So that's the one where we'd recommend that they stay if they are a new student to the UK. However, students are able to stay off campus as well. And being in Hertfordshire, which is near the countryside, there's actually ample off-campus accommodation as well, which is fantastic, as a lot of students have said. And we use a accreditation scheme called PAL accredited landlords, and those landlords are obviously have met a certain criteria, so we can approve those rooms that they'll be staying in will be of good quality. Obviously, there's cost differences between the two, so it's just whatever fits within the student's budget is probably the best option to go for. And they'll need to consider if they're living with family and friends. If they are living with family, off-campus accommodation might be their best option, because typically the university accommodation, we wouldn't let students stay there. It just depends on what's best for them. So if we go to the next slide, I'd like to quickly just talk to you about the agent and partner toolkit. So obviously we've gone through a lot of information over the past 20 plus slides. And now a lot of you might be wondering, where can I get this information from and find out more about it? Well, we've created a dedicated section on our website called the Agent and Partner Toolkit. This part of the website isn't listed. So what this means is students can't access it. Only you can access it with the link that we have. So we'll give you this link, and over here, you'll have all the information about what the university is doing about coronavirus, our accommodation, how to apply, all of our leaflets that you usually get physical copies of, you'll now get digital copies, as well as our counselor guide, which provides a lot of the information that we've gone through today. If we go to the next slide, This section is our events and digital and overseas visits page, where we include all of the stuff that we're currently doing. At the moment, obviously, we're not doing overseas visits. So what we're doing instead is having 2 weekly live Q&A sessions, as well as subject sessions with all of our academic schools. So if you want to get up to more, enhance your knowledge on the different courses that we offer, I'd highly recommend having a visit on this page, and you will be able to update yourself on the different areas that the university provides. As well as with your students, we can do tailor-made sessions as well. So just something for you to consider. And then if we go to the next slide, we have a function within our website that allows you to speak directly to our current students. So any applicants that you've got, if they're uncertain about certain things, why don't you say, hey, you can speak to a current student, and then if they go into this section of our website and they say what they're interested in, a student who studied that subject area will pop up, and they can have a conversation with them about how they're finding the course, how they're finding the university, what's to do in the local area. So this is a fantastic a platform that we've got on our website, and it's something that I highly encourage you guys to use as a tool. And if we go to the next slide, it's thank you very much. So thanks again for listening to myself. And Brad will introduce you to the next section of our training for next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shayaz. So a lot of the information we've told you today, just so you know, obviously some of it will be relevant for most universities in the United Kingdom, but always refer to your university partner just to clarify any specific things with specific universities, especially around the UKVI finances, admissions dates and admissions processes. But we hope today's session has been useful for you. This will be available from Monday on the website, which will be go.hearts.ac.uk/IDP course. And there'll also be all the relevant links to our counsellor guide, the documents that Shires has talked through there, as well as our agent and partner toolkit. Our next session is going to be on the 4th of June, next Thursday, and it's understanding the global business environment. That'll be at 9 o'clock, as well as 1 o'clock as well. So that repeat session we do in the afternoon. Again, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed it and wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you very much.